You're about to hear from George Mellor. He's a special guest today because he is my grandfather and he's in his 90s. Now, he hasn't donated time to biohacking his health, healing his gut, or optimizing his hormones. He's a regular Nebraska farmer, yet he's lived to be 95 years old. So I thought, who better to interview than him? So let's hear from someone who's nearly a centenarian what he thinks has contributed to his longevity. So welcome to the show, Grandpa Miller.
Welcome to you.
How old are you, Grandpa, as of today?
95.
Are you sure?
Well, I'll be 96 in 2 weeks.
I think by the time this airs, you're going to be a ripe old 96. So that's truly amazing. I can't say that I know many 95-year-olds. So I want to dive into your life story and hear really what your life has been like so that my audience can glean as much as they can from your past experiences. So why don't we start at the beginning? Tell me about your childhood. Where were you born?
I was born in a little area called Middle Branch, Nebraska. I think it was just a post office and maybe a store. I really don't remember.
And how many siblings did you have?
8.
So you're the eldest boy of 9,
I'm,
is that correct?
I'm right in the middle.
Oh, you're in the middle. I can never get that right. Oh, what kind of meals did you have? What was your nutrition like?
Well, we didn't have meat in the summertime because there's no way to keep it unless it was canned. We ate canned meat and chicken
Okay.
and always potatoes and gravy.
What about homemade bread? You once told me about some
We
homemade bread.
we had a lot of homemade bread, yes.
What was your daily routine like? Farm chores or what was your life like growing up?
Well, all depends on what stage it was. We always had chores to do and milking to do and cattle to feed.
And I think you went to school only through the 8th grade, right? Because your dad wanted you to help him on the farm.
That was right.
Tell me a little bit more about the manual labor that you did. So I think you made the mistake you told me once of showing you could do a man's work at a young age. So then that was expected of you.
I like to do that, and I did, and my dad was happy for me to do it, I think.
So I think you were digging post holes by hand. I mean, you had some pretty hard manual labor. If I'm,
It was all manual labor,
yeah, literally.
feeding the cattle and pitching hay into the barn and cleaning out the barn.
Sure.
Yep.
What about even when we think of technology, like you primarily worked with horses, right? Even before
Yes.
tractors.
Yep. Quite a while.
So one time I think you said you drove your wagon. I mean, you were like young, 7 or 8 years old, and you drove a wagon. Tell me about that time.
Well, I was 8 years old, and we moved our cattle up by Martin, South Dakota to winter them. And I drove a wagon. We just slept under the wagon at night, and it was a 2-day trip.
Was it hot or cold outside?
It was fall. It was all right. It was cool.
Okay. And my generation pretty much has no idea of that sort of responsibility and manual labor at such a young age. I see you smiling there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 8 years old then.
Now, how old were you when you got married?
Oh, I don't know. I must have been around 21,
Okay.
maybe
So
23. I'd have to figure it up.
younger than I was, I'll say that. So I want to go back to technology again for a moment here, because did you even have electricity back then? Like, I don't even know when
We
that.
didn't we didn't have electricity until we'd been married a few years.
Okay. All your childhood life, I mean, no electricity, used
No phone.
horses, not tractors, no telephones, no air conditioning, like
No, definitely not.
didn't have any of that. And no radio, no television, no internet, no smartphones. You still don't have a smartphone, right?
I don't want a smartphone.
You're smarter without one. Yeah. I think my observation is that lack of technology has maybe contributed to your longevity, right? You're still not being addicted to those sort of technologies, not being exposed to a lot of electromagnetic frequencies and whatnot. Likely has helped you. My generation gets bombarded with a lot of that, and they're addicted to their smartphones. And I think the smartphones make them dumber. And you probably would agree with that.
I think so.
So let's talk about your time in the service. So being that you're 95, that's going to put you in the range of World War II. Is that the correct war? Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you serve there?
Yeah, I went in the fall of 1944 and got out in the spring or the summer of 1946.
Okay. And what did you do on your ship? You were in the Navy.
I was in the Navy. I steered the ship, and later on, I just seen that someone else steered it right.
Okay. Always been a good driver, I guess.
You kind of wondered at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're out there, and you wonder what you're doing out there. You can't see nothing. It's totally black. All you can see is your compass.
Got to depend on that.
Yep.
So tell me about your initiation. You have a story where you crossed the equator. Tell me about that.
Well, it was a little bit severe. They had shillelaghs they made. They made them out of canvas and packed them with K-Pod out of life jackets and then soaked them in salt water. And when you went down the line, they was beating on you all the way. The way they initiated you.
Okay.
And years later, I was in the vet's hospital just getting a checkup. And I was still pretty much blotched and
seriously?
Didn't look too good, and they wanted to know how come. And I said, well, I think that's leftover from the initiation. He said, hey guys, come look at this. That was a little bit embarrassing.
Holy smokes, holy smokes. Tell us one of your kind of unique joys that you had in New Caledonia when you got to see the natives there.
Oh, we let the natives come aboard ship one day, just the top deck. And the next week when we was in port, why they come down and sang to us and beat on hollow logs for drums. And I have never heard such harmony in my life. Of course, we couldn't understand any of the words.
Sure.
But it was beautiful.
Made it worth the trip, huh?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Tell us and our listeners about the story where you were almost shipped to go on the Indianapolis. This is an important story for our family because you share.
On the barracks we were in, there was a big bulletin board with the roster of what ship you was going on. And we was scheduled, or I was, and some other guys too, to go on the Indianapolis. But one day they switched us over to the Vincennes. Well, we didn't care what ship we went on, but thank goodness we went on the one we did because the Indianapolis was the last ship sunk in World War II.
And that was a ship that, was it delivering part of the atomic bomb?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And they got sunk. So had you been on that ship, I wouldn't be here. So, and is that, is the picture behind you the ship you were on? Is that what that painting is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
That ship is one of the smaller ships, smaller than a battleship or a carrier, but it's still longer than 2 football fields.
Sure, still very big. So we know being physically fit and exercise can help the aging process. And I know starting at a young age, you were required to participate in pretty hard manual labor, but also in the service, you were physically fit. And it was discovered that you had some pretty high running speed, pretty fast speed. Tell me about that.
Well, this was in boot camp and we was running a relay race. And it was a race where you just run back and forth. And I was the last one to leave and I tied for first place. And then the company commander wanted to get a little contest around and get a little money involved, but I didn't go for that.
So basically you were the fastest guy at boot camp, which was of hundreds and hundreds.
Oh,
hundreds
well,
of that.
it was, they said there was 10,000 men there and
holy
every
smokes.
company had the representative, so I don't know.
Well, for sake of the story, we'll stick with, we'll stick with that. Tens of
Yeah.
thousands.
I can't prove it, and you can't prove me wrong.
Well, I hope those genes have been passed down to my son, William, who is your great grandson. The speed was certainly passed down to my father and my brothers. And William seems to be a little Speedy Gonzalez, so I think hopefully he's inherited some of that. Let's talk a little bit about relaxation. So most of my listeners on numerous podcasts have listened to me talk about how important it is to have a calming outlet, the relaxation techniques, strategies to reduce high cortisol to help your body kind of rejuvenate. So through your life, what activities or hobbies have you participated in that you've enjoyed that have served as relaxation for you?
Oh, I like to fish if I had time to go fishing. I enjoyed that a lot, and hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a bowling team the later years of my life, and I got a few trophies in that. And I always liked to dance, and we went to a lot of
Yes.
dances.
You square dance, right?
Yes.
Yep. And you fished a lot of places. You fished in Canada and you enjoy ice fishing, maybe not anymore.
Not anymore.
My dad likes to tell a story about ice fishing where you knew the trick about, he says it better than me, keeping the worms warm.
Well, you can tell a kid anything, and I tell him you had to keep them in your mouth to keep them warm.
Well, laughter helps keep you young. So whether that's true or not, it gave us a laugh. So speaking of my dad, so family has also been really important to you. So you were in a large family and you have created a large family. So how many children do you have?
I had 4 children, or we had 4 children.
Yes. And then I think 9 grandkids and somewhere around maybe 11 great grandkids and counting.
I know there's 9 grandkids, and I quit counting.
Sure. Do you think having grandkids and great grandkids has helped to keep you young?
Oh, sure.
You've always been very generous with your family and you've always had an open door policy. And I know we all appreciate just growing up, having lots of cousins at the house together, and you just offering a safe place for anyone to stop in, stay for a few days, provide a good meal. We've all appreciated that. So thank you and Grandma, for being the hostesses with the mostest. I think resiliency and adaptability to change are also character traits of those who have reached the age that you have. And you've gone through many different stressful events in your life, one being when a tornado hit your farm around 1992. So what do you think helped you through when those times hit?
Well, you really don't have any choice, so you just have to buckle down and take care of it. But I had some awful good neighbors that helped come to clean up. I think that noon while we fed 35 people, or the ladies did.
So community just coming together to help with cleanup. Now, most recently, I think it was 2019, maybe it was 18, you guys got affected by the flood. Was that 18 or
19?
19? Okay. So the Spencer and the Niobrara
I guess
Bridge.
I'm wrong. I'm not sure of that, but I think is 18 or 19.
That's what I was thinking. The Spencer Bridge and the Niobrara Bridge near you got taken out, like literally taken out with all the flooding. So how did this affect you?
Well, my farm is 10 miles south of where we live in town. And we had to cross that bridge, and we had to go to another bridge, which made about a 30-mile drive with country roads in order to get to the farm.
Sure.
And we didn't have to be there every day. We just went out to fix fence in the spring.
Sure. Well, and you also, weren't you guys without water, like for months?
Oh, yeah. We had different sources of water, but we had water.
Like bottled water, but
and
right.
They tapped into some other wells that were in the area.
So again, kind of a challenge not a lot of my generation had experienced until, well, this year in Iowa, we got hit with a derecho. So we were without power for a week, and now I don't want to experience that again. No, thank you. That was rough, but it kind of, like you said, you have no choice, but you got to deal with the cards you've been dealt and move forward. So A previous guest on my podcast, Dr. Sandy Scheinbaum, talked much about how important curiosity and community both are for longevity. And I think you have both of those traits. So let me ask you, would you consider yourself to be a curious individual or a bit of a risk taker?
Oh, yes, we have. I call it plunging. We've made some pretty wild investments a time or two, but they all worked out.
Let's start with maybe maybe your first risk. So tell me the story about you taking your civil service test.
Well, I took a civil service test to work in the post office in O'Neill. And when I went in there and seen there was about a dozen people in there, I thought, what in the world am I doing here with my 8th grade education? Because there was people, probably all of them with high school degrees and some college students.
Sure.
But I took it anyway, and I was told later by the guy that done the testing that I was done 10 minutes ahead of everybody.
So you had more common sense maybe
They were
than them, or
common sense questions.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that worked out for you. You did work at the post office for a
I
while, but
worked for a while, and I decided I wanted to be a farmer, and the dumbest thing I ever done in my life, but I don't regret it today. I done what I wanted to do.
so you took a big step, big risk. You bought the
Big,
farm, right? And
yeah.
everyone laughed at you, said you'd never get it paid off, but you did, right?
Yes, years and years ago.
So then what happened? So I think you had to adapt though as a farmer because you had some back problems, right?
Yeah. I quit farming, and we built a motel in town, and we moved in and run the motel for a few years.
And added on more units there, and you had to sell your cattle and equipment at one point, right? And then you added a dairy mart. Did I say that right?
Yeah, we built an ice cream place, soft ice cream. So we had the motel and the dairy mart, we called it.
Right. So you had to decide some other avenues of, revenue generation, and then you were able to go back to farming, right?
I got the bug about irrigation. We dug an irrigation well to see if there was water, and there was.
Yay.
And I slowly went back and got involved in that big time.
So you were the first to put down irrigation in your part of the country, is that right?
In this area, yeah.
The family joke is we were hoping for oil, but we got water instead. Dang. But I'll still take the water, yeah. Water's better than no water. So I think having the farm, but also the dairy mart, the hotel, you also built an assisted living in your area. I think that speaks to you being a staple in your community, back to community, and how important that is.
I was involved in all of those, yeah.
Yep. So how else have you been involved with like volunteering and whatnot in your community?
Oh, I was on the county fair board for many years, and I've been I guess, chairman of unlimited amount of different organizations. I've been on 3 different school boards. So there's been a lot of things.
And the fire department, right?
Oh yeah, for 37 years.
And I think you still volunteer at church on Sundays. I think you were handing out programs and
doing
something
I quit that the last year.
Okay.
My legs give out.
It's about time. I think your community, supporting the community, may have transitioned into supporting the local coffee shops now.
I still support that. That's education.
Okay. So how many times a day do you go to coffee, Grandpa? Be honest.
If the weather's fit, I go twice.
Okay.
Morning and the afternoon.
Maybe coffee a day keeps the doctor away. I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's talk about coffee and go back to diet for a minute here. So you were blessed to have homemade meals most of your life. Grandma was an excellent cook. We all can attest to that. So what do you enjoy for breakfast? What's been a staple in your diet for breakfast?
Bacon and eggs and oatmeal.
I like that. I think at one point you told me oatmeal because it was cheap, right? Like it growing
In
up,
my
maybe.
early life, that was very
Yeah,
important.
but also had good fiber. So, and then what was lunch like when you were farming and whatnot? What'd you have for lunch?
Well, we always had big meals out on the farm in the early years, so we had meat and we had vegetables, so we had it all.
And potatoes. You like your potatoes. What about dinner? Or is dinner basically similar, kind of traditional Midwest?
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of years I took a lunch to the farm after we moved to town and
Okay.
I'd eat a lunch.
What about your water intake? Did you drink lots of water through your life, or is
Always
that?
have, yes.
Yep. Good, good. What about sweets? Do you have a sweet tooth or no?
Oh, yeah. I like chocolate. I like all of it.
Let's talk a little bit about faith. Also, speaking of church and you volunteering at church, has faith been a big part of your life?
Always.
Always. I like that. So after kind of again everything that you've been through, one of the things that I note is that you've been very just mentally sharp. You still can spit me a good joke when we're there visiting. You have a lot of good one-liners. So what do you think, and you don't have to have a perfect answer for this, but what do you think has kept you mentally sharp? Do you think you have good genes? Do you think your nutrition had been good? Or what do you think has contributed to that?
I don't know. I think I'll tell you like I heard another guy say, I've left all that to the man with the scarred hands.
I've never heard you say that. Hmm, interesting.
Nail scarred hands.
So back to no, manual labor. Maybe that's what's kept you going. Well, I want to ask if you have any top longevity tips for the audience. Is there anything that I know I'm putting you on the spot here that has stood out through your life that you think has any tips that
I,
you want to
I,
share, I should
I
say?
just thought I had a normal life, and that's about all I can say on that.
I see you as very being just content and still, having joy despite challenges. And like you said, some things you can't change. You just kind of have to go through them, and because we don't have control over everything. I think my take home when I think of what we've talked about, just trends again for overall longevity is that you again have been very hard worker from a young age, and you've had faith. You've been a family man, drank lots of water, but also coffee. You've had had a curiosity and a resiliency through tough times, and you've not been afraid to fail. And you've also always given back and a lot and been very involved in your community. You've actually been called the King of Spencer, the king of your town, which I suspect is for the significant impact that you've had on that area and legacy that you've left. So I am very proud to call you my grandpa, and that's in part why my son William's middle name is after you, George. His name is William George Gray. So thank you for coming on the show, Grandpa. Thank you for sharing some tips through your life. It was an honor to interview you. Love you.
Thank you.